Hi everybody, I'm Jessica Dedeaux Smith, so my name is really basic, Jessica Smith, you can never forget it. I can also find multiple of me everywhere. But I'm Jessica, I'm currently at Texas Tech, and we're currently researching the discovery of disruptive external sensory stimuli against perpetrators. So this is foundational research, it is currently a narrative review, we're writing the manuscript right now. So bear with me as I give you this information. A little about me, I am a full-time engineer at the Boeing Company, and I'm a part-time PhD student, so my life is super exciting. My social life is nonstop. I'm kidding. My dog keeps me social. But, all right. So welcome to the U.S. It's the land of the free, the land of the Second Amendment, and the land where schools are war zones. How many of you experienced code blue, code red, or some type of emergency drill going to elementary school, or middle school, or high school? All right, you're trained to survive a gun attack. So the next two videos are going to be a bit jarring, so if you have to look away, I respect that. This is from the Nashville school shooting that happened this year in 2023. As you can see, they're walking down the aisle. Everyone's performing what you know as a code blue, code red emergency drill. And this is from the body cam of the police officer.
It's upstairs. Conflict's upstairs.
So this is called a mass shooting incident. A mass shooting is where 4 or more people are wounded, injured, or killed. These happen at schools. So our research is currently is an active school shooter. So I'm going to refer to these two terms a lot throughout the presentation. I also may say perpetrator as an active school shooter to just keep the words concise. So here's some facts. 93% of school shooters have planned the attack in advance. They're all inspired by what you know as Columbine in 1999. And there have been 376 school shootings since Columbine, 1999. 554 children, educators, and school staff have been victims of school shootings since 1999. That is only including the deaths. 12 children in any group have experienced any form of gun violence or have a gun in their home or have experienced during school. And even worse, 4.6 million American children live in a home where there's at least one gun. I will say I owned many firearms. My husband is an officer in the military. I'm not against guns. I'm just speaking on the facts. Going with that, there have been 348,000 children that have been exposed to gun violence during school hours. That's 8 to 3. That's not including a soccer game or basketball game. And locally here in Texas, we had 19 children, 2 adults die at Uvalde, Texas, attending elementary school. And if that doesn't have you, by the 88th day of the school year in 2023, there were 89 gun-related incidents where children brought a gun to school or there was some type of planned event. So it continues. 1999 to 2023, it's never stopping. It's continuing to be a problem, and this is something that we can actually impact and we can help with. So let's talk about hierarchy engineering, hierarchy control engineering. I'm an engineer full-time. This is logic to me, right? So let's eliminate them. Take guns from all civilians. Those are people who are not authorized to carry a gun. Guess what? You have the constitutional right to carry a gun based off the Second Amendment. You have the right to bear arms. You cannot do that. That's out. There's isolation. You can ban guns from schools, churches, public events. That's already in play. Right now, an active shooter comes in with their lethal weapon, and they pass any active or passive barrier, and they get in, they get out. That's out. You can substitute. You can turn the less lethal weapons into less than lethal weapons. So you can say, hey, you can't buy an assault rifle anymore. Guess what? You still have the right to bear arms due to the Second Amendment of the Constitution. You can also hand a teacher a gun. Here's the problem. For those of you who are professors, my mother is retired as a dean. I cannot ask anyone to shoot a child. That's out. Engineering control. This is something we'll come back to. The lethal part is an ethical concern. There's an educational implication. Say you know the professor has a gun in their desk. How do you know a child is not going to go and get that weapon? And then you have administrative control. You have gun safety, gun training. You can go through all those different things. Many of you raised your hands that you've currently participated in that. You did it as a child. How is that helping children right now? That's out. And then you can have personal protective equipment, PPE, safety glasses, bulletproof vest, bars on the doors, bulletproof doors. Welcome to prison. That's out. So right now we have a need for a non-lethal countermeasure that can aid in this situation. That's what leads us to our engineering control. Right now, that is the only optimal solution that we can consider due to our legal constraints, our standards, and regulations that are currently in school systems. So lethal measures, guns, they can stop the threat. That's the whole point of gun training. Many of you who have obtained a guns license in Texas, the number one rule is to stop the threat and then know your backdrop. They're long range, they have a rapid response. The problem is that you're going to hit an innocent bystander. There's a loss of many human lives, and in the point of Columbine, in 20 minutes, there were 13 people dead, dozens wounded as the perpetrators committed suicide, and there was no police intervention. The problem wasn't that the police did not respond. The problem was time. There's never been an event where anyone was able to come like, oh, there's an active shooter? What in the world? How do we respond to that? There was no preparedness. It's not their fault. The problem is that there's not some type of engineering control, there's not some type of mechanism filling that gap before the police can enter the building. So you have the non-lethal measures. They do the same thing. They stop the threat, human life is intact, it's temporary. There's an innocent bystanders remain safe. Even if they are hit, they are still safe. And the problem is they're short range and they're less accurate, and that's where human factors can come in. So let's talk about some different types of non-lethal countermeasures. This is some of the research that we put into the literature review. I don't know a lot about weapons. I work in aerospace, so I had to do this as well. So I have pictures. So a water cannon. A water cannon, if you focus on the two columns that are impact and the school perspective, that's really what I'm aiming at. So the water cannon has a visual impairment. It can destabilize you, and it can hit long range in a school system. The next thing is chemical, pepper spray. Many of you may have it on you right now. You can't take it to TSA, to Korea, or anywhere you're going to go, but you can have it on you right now. That's got to have short range vision impairment. That's fine. Then you have the taser, another thing that's short range. It stuns the person, they're incapacitated for a minute, and then that's enough time really to get somebody. Let's talk about optics, so lasers. So lasers can be installed in this room right now and you wouldn't know it. It can visually impair you, it can distract you, it can disrupt you, and it can be installed into the school system, and it can happen at a distance. I don't have to be with you for a laser to stop you. Another thing is sonic. Sonic sounds, whether we have like a police siren sound that comes through the school or some type of high beam siren that comes through that just makes you just fall down to the ground, that's an auditory impairment. That's a temporary distraction. It also can be worked at a distance and can be in your sound system. Last one is combine the two, flash and bang. So a flash and bang is when I throw something, it makes a loud sound and a flash. So not only are you blinded, but you can't hear anything. That can also happen at a distance. So that leaves us with the three terms that we have, which is delay, disrupt, or distract. A lot of times an active school shooter is at the average age of 16. Once again, we cannot ask anyone to kill anyone, right? There are other ways to go about this. So if you want to stop a kid from doing something, you can just delay them, disrupt them, and distract them. That leads us with these three at the bottom: optics, acoustics, and the combination of the two. So what we're proposing here with our research is a term called anti-human factors. It took me forever, over 17,000 searches of terms to find where this is listed, and it's not. So usually, basically, if I hand you this chair, right, and I say, okay, yeah, sit in the chair, and you go to sit down and I pull it. That's an anti-human factor. So the chair is meant to help you, but all I did was release it or remove it, and now you are on the ground and I'm laughing. So that's what we want to do. We want to use anti-human factors theory to develop a non-lethal visual and auditory stimuli that can delay, disrupt, or distract the cognitive functions of an active school shooter. So that's where I want to lead this discussion, and maybe if you guys, with the questions and everything, we can kind of guide them in this way. So we're working, the next phase after we work to publish the manuscript is to do a simulation of what auditory and visual stimuli that we can test, right, through VR, as we're going to listen to the panel later. And then what non-lethal countermeasures would you use? I have mentioned some examples, but what are some other ones that you can think of that we can maybe investigate? Also, what are some auditory and visual stimuli that we can investigate? There were two great dealing with the mind, and that's way over my head, medical. What could we use? Like what senses would you attack or investigate in that way? And then anyone want to collaborate and have stake in this? This is truly new. There's no one that's done it yet. Everyone tiptoes around the idea because it's controversial. But it's time to do something about it. It's time to speak up, and we in Texas, we can do something. So before that, I just want to acknowledge my family, Dr. Sun in the Share Lab, Texas Tech for helping me do this, and then Boeing does not fund this research, they just fund my tuition. Shout out to them. And then I want to acknowledge those who have fought against it, who have, mourned anyone who's lost anyone. I know that there could be many connections in this room, so I'm truly sorry, and hopefully we can do something. And thanks God for the opportunity. And then here are my references. These are all lists of different videos or documentaries, different research around the subject, but nobody's directly attacked it yet. And that's my presentation.
Questions?
It's a hard subject.
So I know a lot of these are more like reactive measures and stuff like that. Did you happen to come across anything that you think would work as well as a complementary preventative measure?
Yeah, so the bulletproof doors. Right now, a lot of people are discussing that and the science behind how to put a bulletproof door that's also light enough for an 8-year-old to push into a classroom. So some different measures like that are preventative. A lot of them are built into the walls. Like this wall would look the same way, but it'd have some type of plate in between it so you can't shoot through a wall. A lot of the different active shooting situations, I did have to go and read all of those and watch a lot of them. It can be really jarring when you see a bullet go through a wall. You don't know what it hit, right? So they've been looking at that, but our research is not necessarily looking at that yet, but it could be an opportunity that we also investigate. Okay. In the back in the red.
I was just wondering if you were to implement like some sort of design solution that makes it harder for an active shooter to like either continue shooting or like incapacitates them, whatever method that you introduce, how does that not in some way like create some psychological damage for the students? Like, I just know that if I was in school and I was with my buddies near the lockers and then we had a drill, like I would be kind of scared. I'd be honestly scared for my life if there was like something that came down like while testing and things like that. So to me, it just seems like the psychological damage question is like, it's very hard to address.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So one of the first papers I read was actually the psychological damage that active shooting and the emergency drills has on children. As you can assume, it's extremely negative. Some of them have become pretty brash where they go into the hallway as they're evacuating and they're like teachers pretending to be dead. The psychological damage is there, and it's pretty insane. I never experienced that, but that's what my school that I went to as a kid kind of leans towards now. So I would say that we'd have to work closely with the psychology department and the human factors department to look more into that. But I think we should definitely include that. I'm in the green.
Are you taking any measures to look at the interaction of these? For instance, what you're saying is we're going to disrupt the particular shooter, but in this case, you also have police that are entering in this case.
Right.
If what you're doing is, for example, completely filling the area with tear gas, for instance, as a response, and then you're sending somebody else in to try and deal with it. If you're disrupting the shooter, you're also disrupting other people trying to make that happen. And if both groups are slowing down, constantly, it may cause problems. The other thing that's worth thinking is they might interact in weird ways, right?
Yes.
So if you're doing the audio and the visual combination, or you're doing things that affect visibility in the space, if you're, for example, bouncing lasers off, but then you have something that's creating diffractive fields within your area, you could be directing those lasers in ways you don't want them to go. So I was just wondering, have you considered adding a component about the interaction of all these different models and the duration of them for people that aren't just the shooter?
That's a good question, and that's something we can include in the simulation of how those can interact. So when we're looking at what type of VR simulation we're going to introduce, we can keep that in mind of how they're interacting. Well, right now we're looking at doing visual, then audio, and then them together. So when we're doing the together, we'll keep that in mind. In regards to the first part with the police, so a lot of times your school board and your school knows everything in there. A lot of you may not know, most of your light fixtures and just about everywhere had cameras. Those are things students were not supposed to know. So the students would know, but the police would know every inch of what's happening. So the idea would be to direct the shooter somewhere so they can corner him. Just like and you saw in the Nashville, the body cam, he was saying they were cornered. That was intentional. They were trying to lead the perpetrator to an area so they could gun them down. So we'll keep that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you.